it's not only IMGs. Every state is a different country here. Then when we have all this mix of people coming from different places, you start learning. And that's a beautiful part of the things that I learned here in the US, where you start cross-pollinating ideas when you're actually creating fun stuff.
California Pediatrics, a podcast by pediatricians from the 4 California chapters of the American Academy of Pediatrics, AAP California Chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 chapters, 1 state, 1 voice. In 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to California Pediatrics, where we discuss topics of interest to pediatricians and families and spotlight the professional journey of our guests. I'm Dr. Grant Christman, a pediatric hospitalist in Los Angeles, California.
And I'm Dr. Eric Ball. I'm a pediatrician in Orange County, California. And today we're honored to have Dr. Ilan Shapiro with us as our guest. Good to see you, Dr. Shapiro.
A pleasure completely to be with you. And I am very excited because this is something very close to my heart. And I lived through it, and I think that it's going to shine some light of what's happening right now.
Well, so in the pediatric profession now, we've been seeing a large increase in the number of pediatricians who have studied internationally or international medical grads, as are you. So we're hoping today you can talk to us a little bit about that, and also maybe share some of your journey on becoming a pediatrician here.
Gladly. Right now, some information that we need to know. Around 25% of all the physicians in the US are international medical graduates. There's 2 groups. One, they are US citizens and people that actually are non-US IMGs. And I'm one of those non-US IMGs. And maybe my accent will show something on that part, but yes, it's part of the things that we have. It actually created a space where a lot of the IMGs that we are here, we're doing different things in special places. And what do I mean with this? A lot of people try to figure out, like, where are we working? Why is 25% the number that we have here? Are we creating enough doctors? What's the difference? Well, I see it in multiple ways. And I can tell you for sure why I chose to be here. I chose to be here because coming from Mexico and being so close to the US, understanding that right now we are probably 130 million Mexicans, and probably, low number, 20 million Mexicans are living here in the US. And a lot of them have been here for decades, a lot of them newcomers. And the other thing is that, when we are healthy and we create that future of wellness in kids, and we give them the opportunity to have stable households, stable mental health, stable wellness, their vaccines, their preventive stuff, we actually all have a better healthy community. And as an IMG, a big part of us go to primary care. And not only that, we end up serving in rural areas, places that actually they need doctors. And that's the opportunity that we have as IMGs to actually bring that culturally and linguistic concordance part of it and care to help our communities.
One of the things we do here on California Pediatrics is talk to pediatricians about their journeys into healthcare, into pediatrics. So tell us, how did you come to the United States? Tell us about your journey as an international medical graduate.
First of all, I need to open my heart to both of you. I was between pediatrics and geriatrics. Oh yes, that's the complete truth. And I started seeing that with geriatrics, it's something very important. It's the last part of our lives. We need to live it well. But I really wanted to create the path for health and wellness, where if you invest 21 years in a little person that becomes a kid, that becomes a teenager, and a young adult, you can actually try to guarantee a better health and a happy wellness life after 21 for the next 80 years. And I saw the investment there, and I prefer actually to be on the pediatric side. And also, it's amazing to have a team to work with. That the family members, the parents, the community. Usually, we're very welcoming to create better choices and opportunities for children. That was kind of where I was starting with. I ended up, I thought that I was going to get married. And as part of the whole process, I was like, okay, then I really want to serve the the Hispano community abroad. I saw that there were not a lot of Hispano doctors in the US. I saw that the communities that needed the most, there were no doctors, and I was very interested of actually being a pediatrician and ending up in those areas to serve. And I had the opportunity. I started working first at the WHO as a liaison between Mexico and the WHO, and I loved it. And at the same time, I was doing that thing called the steps. Very fun time to actually get married, doing the steps, and at the same time trying to apply for the match and flying across Geneva and Mexico. And all of that thing gave me perspective, where my training, I saw the little pueblitos, the little towns in Mexico, and also the little pueblitos across the border, what's happening in Texas, Florida, also California. Then I was very interested on that connection. And I got my opportunity to work at, and actually start my residency at Mount Sinai Hospital in Chicago, where for the first time I saw that thing called snow. And it was quite interesting because my concept of snow was the ones that you actually ate and had colors and flavors. I started actually understanding a lot of the cultural mix that we have. Like that, even though that you come from another place, these opportunities for children specifically, we can have a fresh start if you give we don't need millions or billions or trillions of dollars. We need a family that actually wants to have the information on how to act, and most importantly, how to protect the kids.
I was kind of curious about something you alluded to a couple minutes ago, which is that there are different kinds of IMGs. I was wondering if you could talk about that a little more for those of us who don't know as much about that.
Gladly. We all have dreams, and we want to, well, I want to be a doctor for whatever reason. And you need to choose where you want to study. Then a lot of the US future doctors need to choose between the access of actually starting a med school here in the US, or actually going to the Caribbean, or to Mexico, or to Europe, and actually do their MD career there, and after that come back and do residency. For those ones that actually started in the US, but actually end up having their MD degree from another country, are called US International Medical Graduates. I, born and raised in Mexico City, all my life in Mexico City. I did my MD in Mexico City. That's why I'm a non-US international medical graduate. The big difference on reality, it's not even the training. It's how the match and the perception when you're applying for it, it changes. Usually if you're a US IMG, you have better chances to actually match. Where if you're a non-US IMG, you have probably between 45 to 50% probability of actually matching to what you wanted.
What are some of the barriers that international medical graduates have, whether they're US born or foreign born?
The teaching is different. We are not, here when you start pre-med, med school and everything else, you are all the time trained to actually answer questions, answer the exam. There's like prep for that. There's like special meetings for that. They actually teach you all the tricks, just do B because it's better. There's like little tricks that you end up doing during your entire career, and when you actually do the steps that are standardized testing, you actually do better. You have training for 6 years, actually from high school, that you do the SAT, and where most of us as international medical graduates, the med school is more on the clinical side. Yes, there are exams, there are standardized exams, but it's not that you have the exam and you know kind of the content. It's different. Then at the moment that we come from the outside, first, we just need to start like in our own time, doing absolutely everything, not as part of the curriculum, to actually start study for the steps. Then you need to do all that part. The second part is that, and it happens like when you meet like your future partner. When you start dating, if you have good references, right? And you know the people around that person that you're dating, you go, oh, well, more brownie points, checklists, more on this side. But if it's the first time that you're meeting them on a bar and you have no idea where they're coming from, and you had a good, good conversation, you had fun and everything else, but still the one that actually has more references and you kind of know a little bit more on the back end, it gives you more safety and security. Then a lot of the times when we're international medical graduates, you have that feeling that, it's a good match. We had fun on the bar. Maybe there's a future, but if you need to choose between both, you go with the one that actually you know better. And it's the natural way that the system is set up. Is that good or bad? We can actually debate that part. That's another topic for another day. But that's one of the things that you end up having on that part. And the other thing is, when you're in your country, you know the hospitals, you know the system, you know the doctors. It's easier to actually get a letter of recommendation. But if I get a letter of recommendation from one of the directors of a program in Mexico, it doesn't carry that much weight as a letter of recommendation of a U.S. program. Then you start having all these things that are different. That doesn't mean that the opportunities are not here. That doesn't mean that it's that everybody fails because of it. No, it's part of the game that you play as a non-U.S. IMG.
So I'm also curious, since you talked a little bit about like the challenges with taking exams, is the medical school experience, was it for you, was it structured similarly to how we structure the medical school experience here, with 1.5 to 2 years of preclinical in a classroom and maybe 2 to 2.5 years of clinical rotations, or was it different?
Love the question. First of all, there's most of the countries in the world, they do not have college. There's nothing like that. You finish high school, you kind of go to the path of medicine, law, business school, but you start there. You go directly to university without passing college. Then I actually took a gap year between high school and starting that part. And I did a little turn to dentistry for a couple of months.
Oh.
Failed, and did a U-turn and came back to medicine. And usually the structure that it works is 2 years of, like basic knowledge, anatomy, and after that 2 years of clinical part. And the big difference is here. The 5th year, we call it internship. You're the lowest, and this is actually the classic way that most countries actually do it. It's 1 year where you have your 4 core rotations: surgery, OBGYN, pediatrics, and internal medicine. And you're living in the hospital. You're like the lowest ranking member of the medical family. You're the one that brings the tacos. You're the one that actually, I have stories about that one. But the important thing is that you actually get a lot of experience on, there's usually rarely a vascular team. You are the ones that are the one that it's actually drawing. If someone actually needs intubation, you actually are the one doing that part. If there's an emergency section or appendectomy, you're the one that actually is going in. Then the practice part of that on the internship, it's amazing because you really get a lot of experiences and a lot of examples. And that actually carries, because when I was in, and I will tell you a story about Mount Sinai Hospital afterwards, but the last year is actually the year that you do something called social service. You're actually working in a rural community or underserved government-run clinic for 1 year under supervision of another doctor, but practically you're independent. And maybe the closest doctor is like 10, 20 miles away. Then you actually get the internship that you're living in the hospital, the outpatient experience that you are the one that, if there's a broken bone, you need to solve it. If there's someone actually is pregnant and needs to give birth, like, what do? You do it. Then there's a lot of things that you end up doing. Then when you start actually residency, you already have the clinical experience, you have you given service to the community, and also you're ready to learn whatever craft you want to learn.
Did you feel well prepared when you started your residency from your medical school in Mexico?
100% yes. To the point that I have a lot of stories, but the one that actually you brought to my mind was I was in NICU, and one of my rotations that I loved the most. And one day there was an emergency C-section, 24-weeker. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong. Horrible night. The OBGYN resident was doing something else, and the attending was there, ready to actually do the emergency section. With the experience that I had in Mexico, I knew how to scrub in and how to actually attend and actually help with emergency C-section. And after that, I took the baby to the NICU. Then that expertise as a doctor, that expertise as, it is what it is, we need to solve it, we need to help, that gave me that part. And the other thing is that with exposure that I had in Mexico with intubations, with like doing a lot of the trauma stuff that we did in the Red Cross, that it's not in Mexico. It's not just the blood services, but also they actually are like the EMT team that we have. I ended up helping the medics that were going to Afghanistan and Iraq, and then they were training at Mount Sinai Hospital. Then those experiences, and like I was very comfortable doing central lines and other stuff that, it helped, and especially when you're in PICU, NICU, or whatever you needed to actually make a difference for our patients.
Sounds like you had a lot of useful procedural skills and just maybe experience with autonomous practice coming here. Were there any things that were challenging about shifting to clinical practice here? Maybe the guidelines were the guidelines different, or were the practices around ordering labs and other tests different? Like, what did you notice that was different?
We talk a lot about culture, right? And in Mexico, it's very common that the touchy feeling and hugging people and nurses, doctors, patients. It's part of the conversation. Then my first week at Mount Sinai Hospital, the chief nurse actually brought me to her office, and she go like, "Dr. Shapiro, can you sit down?" Like, yes. I thought that she was going to give me like some candy and thank you for everything. You already passed. We're going to waive your 3 years of pediatric residency. Thank you for everything. You're good. And she explained to me that in the U.S. it's not customary to have that touchy feeling, and that had she had to talk with me, and I understood, and that's the first time that I heard these two letters that I never heard, HR. I understood, but one of the things that I actually loved the most of the system was that the system was geared for education. A lot of the systems outside of the U.S. are geared more on classic ways that we have done it for centuries. Like, for example, it was okay to be 48 hours in a hospital, working back to back.
Right.
And after that, get like 12 hours, go to your house, change clothes, come back. Then some of the things that I actually loved was that the balance part of it, that even though that I was doing shifts every 3 days or whatever, that there was more on the balancing part of it and the cultural aspect of it. Yeah.
I want to shift gears for a moment. There's kind of a prevailing anti-immigration sentiment in a proportion of the United States right now, and I'm sure that's affecting the ability of international medical graduates to come and train here and to become physicians here. Can you talk a little bit about some of the recent barriers that have been?
Thank you, Dr. Ball. I think that we have heard a lot of those doctors that were actually training, and for whatever reason, they ended up in immigration custody. One of the most important parts that we have is the reality where we are. 25% of all the physician workforce, and actually even with nursing, the probably it's a little bit higher. It's actually from international medical. There are international medical graduates or international nursing graduates. Then at the moment that we know that we're serving the places that we're hearing the most that are going to be heard with all the changes that we have here in the US, rural areas, underserved areas, and who is actually there? We actually serve, I think that the numbers is 1 over every 30 doctors in rural and underserved areas are IMGs. And we start actually doing the sum of all these things. If we're actually doing that part, we're not just, like having issues at the hospitals, but the places that we need the doctors the most, that we have less funding, that we have less resources, less hospitals. Like, it actually takes like 2 or 3 hours to go to a general hospital. That's the problems that we're going to start having. Then if we take the resources, we have all these closures of hospitals, and we take away the physicians, we are actually not helping the future of our country or the future of that community or the health of the children that we want to serve. Then, and at the moment that you come here, there's like different paths, immigration paths. You have like something called a J1, H1B. There's different ones. Right now, one of the ones that probably everybody has heard, at least on Instagram or somewhere, is the H1B visas. H1B visas give you the opportunity to work Usually what the cost was around $1,000, $2,000, whatever. Right now they went up to $100,000. Then that's a hefty,
That's
apart
more.
from your,
That's more.
yeah. Then that adds to the exams, to everything else, plus $100,000. And a lot of the hospitals go like, well, I do not want to have the financial exposure, or maybe yes, or maybe no, and we can talk about the numbers. But at the end of the day, like it's creating problems. That right now it's like a small problem, but if you compound it for 2028, because I'm not worried about 2026, I'm worried about 2028, where less actually students will actually want to be part of this. Less IMGs want to come here. And the beautiful part when we have all this, because it's not only IMGs, every state is a different country here. Then when we have all this mix of people coming from different places, you start learning. And that's the beautiful part of the things that I learned here in the US, where you start cross-pollinating ideas when you're actually creating fun stuff. And you mix, your Texas barbecue with your Mexican tacos, and at the end of the day, you create like brisket tacos. And that's the mix of beautiful things that we have here that we can actually add on top of that. Then multiply that for research, multiply that for actually medicational or medicinal stuff. Or right now that we're talking about alternative medicine, like what teas actually work, like all that stuff actually can make a difference.
In addition to all of those areas for collaboration, my understanding is that there's a particular interest within the field of pediatrics or a particular role for IMGs in the field of pediatrics. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Gladly. Pediatrics is awesome. Point.
Agree.
Then, and we know it. And usually IMGs have, most of us end up in primary care, and that looks more like pediatrics, internal medicine, and some of them family practice. Why? Well, it's the things that we have loved. It's the things that we see. It's a structure. It's creating that future. Then a lot of us are IMGs, and that number is actually growing. We're seeing a trend where less U.S. grads, doctors are actually going to pediatrics, and slowly more IMGs are going to pediatrics. Would that change or not? I just don't know, but it's important to know that if we cut one of those pipelines, we're actually shooting ourselves. We're not giving that opportunity for the future for the country. Why? Because we know right now that a healthy kiddo, a healthy child, a teenager, a young adult would be someone that actually can bring amazing things for our community. Then if we're not talking about ACEs, not giving their vaccines, not preventing all the things that we can prevent, on the long run, we all lose.
As we come to a close with our conversation today, I wanted to see if you had any advice for our listeners who are in medical school, who are in an international medical school program, or who are looking to go to medical schools and might go abroad for those. What's some advice you can give to these future doctors?
A couple of things. First of all, make sure that you call me, because I have tons of ideas on that part. And the second one is that you need to actually understand that if you're a U.S. grad that's going to med school, a lot of the loan repayment stuff will not work. Then you need to figure out your financial stuff. Saying that, usually going and paying out of pocket, for example, in Mexico, that there's actually devoted programs that it's everything in English. They do the steps, they do absolutely everything. For example, in Guadalajara, there's a couple of them. In Mexico City, there's a couple of them. In Monterrey, there's a couple of them. Those are the largest Mexican cities. Then there's a process that you can actually do that part. Know that your training, hands-on experience will be amazing. You will be exposing yourself if you like doing procedures, if you like actually doing stuff, that's the place to be. And of course, you will need to take time to list all the steps that you need to be doing, because that's going to be part of the whole process. You need to actually do that part in order to be actually have an ECFMG certificate, meaning that you pass all your steps and you're on the okay side. And the point of entry is a little bit harder. If you want to go to neurosurgery of the right side of the brain, It will be very competitive, but it's still possible. Same thing with orthopedics, dermatology. It's possible, but my feeling is most of us actually just want to serve and want to serve in primary care settings.
If you could change one thing to make the experience easier for IMGs to come practice in the U.S., what would you change?
The visa aspect of it.
Yeah.
I think that we lose a lot of really good docs because the hospitals do not want to entertain the whole thing, and I get it. There's a lot of exposure, legal stuff, whatever. But when we see who we are and where we are actually serving, and since I started in Mount Sinai Hospital, urban, underserved community. After that, Fort Myers, Florida, real underserved communities. And right now, even though that I'm in LA, I'm actually working in areas where the amount of doctors per patient it's very low. Then we are there, and it's not that yes they will take no. It's part of the natural thing that we have done. The thing is, getting the opportunity, talking about that part, and expanding this type of programs can actually make a huge difference.
Dr. Shapiro, I wanted to thank you so much for joining us today, for talking about your journey to becoming a pediatrician and the important role that international medical graduates have in our communities here in the United States. And wanted to thank you for joining us here at California Pediatrics. Grant, that was a fascinating conversation. I learned so much from Dr. Shapiro.
Yeah, I mean, the three of us have known each other for a while, and I think sometimes it's easy to forget that there are extra challenges that pediatricians face when coming to practice in the U.S. From another country.
And more pediatricians are being trained in other countries, especially as you talked about in underserved areas. I mean, this is a critical link for allowing all children in the United States to receive health care.
Yeah, I mean, clearly at this time, we're facing challenges recruiting new physicians to pediatrics, and it's good to hear that international medical graduates are helping keep our workforce strong.
Yeah, it was great to hear a different perspective. I look forward to our next guest and more from other pediatricians in California.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us on California Pediatrics.
We'll see you next time.